Hey, I'm Dylan. When my wife, Katrina, tried to ditch me right after I scored my late mom's fortune, she thought she was playing a slick game. I never imagined the woman I'd built my whole world with would flip on me when I was at my lowest. She was banking on waltzing off with half my inheritance. Spoiler alert, she was dead wrong, and she was about to get a reality check. I met Katrina 9 years back. We were mid-20s, chasing big dreams, and fumbling through adulthood one clumsy step at a time. Our vibe just clicked. Conversations rolled easy, sparks flew, and we were on the same page about what we wanted. Those early years, packed with those little, perfect moments that make you think you've found your ride or die. I was convinced I'd found someone who'd have my back no matter what life chucked at us. Not everyone was as stoked, though. When I first brought Katrina to meet my mom, I could sense Mom wasn't exactly her biggest fan. She wasn't rude or icy. Mom was her usual polite self. But after Katrina split that day, Mom pulled me aside for a heart-to-heart I'll never forget. She looked at me with those knowing eyes, the kind only a mom who's seen the world's shady corners has, and said, "Dylan, I get that you're head over heels, but time's gonna show you how this plays out." She wasn't throwing shade at Katrina, just dropping a quiet truth bomb. "I don't dislike her, but you're my only kid. So keep your eyes peeled." That talk stuck with me, but back then, I chalked it up to Mom being overprotective. I took her advice half seriously, not rushing to the altar. Katrina and I dated for a few years before we tied the knot, and when we did, I thought we were solid. Looking back, though, Mom caught something I was too lovesick to notice. Even after we got hitched, things between Katrina and my mom stayed, let's call it politely frosty. No big fights, no drama, just this chilly distance. Mom kept it classy but guarded, like she was watching from the sidelines, ready to speak up only if she had to. She never meddled in our marriage, respecting my choices even if she wasn't thrilled about them. But she and Katrina never got cozy. No heartwarming coffee chats or bonding moments. I told myself that was no big deal. Plenty of people don't vibe with their in-laws. As long as they weren't at each other's throats, I figured we were fine. The first few years of marriage were pretty smooth sailing. Sure, we had the usual bumps. Learning to share a space, tweaking each other's quirks, figuring out how to build a life together. We bickered like any couple, but nothing earth-shattering. I was grinding away at a corporate gig. Steady, but soul-sucking. Deep down, I was itching to build something of my own, to stop clocking in for someone else's dream. So, 2 years into marriage, I took the leap and quit to start my own agency. It wasn't some reckless stunt. I'd done my research, saved up, and put together a small crew. Things chugged along decently for a bit. Then one of my team members royally botched a major project. Total train wreck. We didn't just lose one client. We lost our 2 biggest ones, who bailed faster than you can say, bankrupt. They accounted for over half our revenue, so when they walked, it was like the ground vanished under me. I tried to keep my cool and rebuild. I hustled for new clients, spruced up our pitch deck, chased every lead I could sniff out, but nothing came close to plugging the hole. The agency limped along, barely alive, with income drying up faster than a desert stream. Every week, I watched our bank account shrivel. Every night, I hit the pillow knowing the math wasn't matting. After 2 months of scrambling to keep it together, the stress started seeping into our home. Bills kept coming, groceries didn't magically appear, and I was doing my best to keep the lights on, but it wasn't cutting it. And Katrina? Oh, she was not having it. Whatever patience I thought she had, poof, gone. She turned cold, snappy, and downright bitter, throwing shade like it was her new hobby. I was hoping she'd step up, even just a smidge, while I fought to turn things around. But nope. Miss Sassy Pants had other plans. I wasn't begging Katrina to hold the fort forever, just for a hot minute while I got my head above water. But instead of having my back, she turned every single day into a showdown. If she ever chipped in with cash, oh boy, she'd make sure I knew it, flapping her gums for hours about how I ditched a cushy job to chase some pipe dream that was crashing and burning in real time. Look, I got why she was ticked off, I really did. But what stung like crazy was how fast she started pointing fingers, acting like I'd roped her into this mess just to watch her squirm. like this wasn't our life falling apart. The money troubles weren't the only thing cracking our foundation, though. Truth is, things between us were already wobbling before the financial crap hit the fan. But once the cash dried up, those cracks turned into canyons we could barely even see across. We stopped talking. The warmth vanished. We weren't a team anymore, just two strangers sharing a lease. I was running out of moves, scraping by week after week, praying for some kind of miracle to keep the agency afloat. Asking for help wasn't my style, especially not from my mom. She'd already done so much for me my whole life. But pride doesn't pay the electric bill, and watching everything I'd built crumble? That'll shift your mindset real quick. So one night, I swallowed my ego and drove to Mom's place. I spilled it all, how the agency was tanking, how I'd lost my biggest clients, how I'd been trying to fix it solo but was coming up empty. I braced for a lecture, maybe a told-you-so vibe. But Mom? She just listened, gave a slow nod, and after a quiet moment, got up, grabbed a folder from her drawer and said, "Here, this should tide you over to get things back on track." It was enough to bring in some temp consultants, polish our pitches, and keep the lights on. Not a fairy tale fix, but it gave me room to breathe. Over the next few months, things perked up a bit. I snagged some new clients. Not as big as the ones we lost, but they steadied the ship. I stopped waking up in a panic, thinking the office would be shuttered by Friday. For the first time in forever, I could exhale. But while the business was limping back to life, my marriage was on life support. You'd think the money stress easing up would have cooled things off between us. But nope, it just laid bare how far we drifted. Katrina and I barely swapped words, and when we did, it was shallow, like small talk with a stranger at a bus stop. We weren't hanging out anymore. Not because of crazy schedules, but because we just stopped trying. We'd eat in the same room, barely glancing at each other. Shared a bed, but might as well have been on different planets. I tried to spark something, but all I got back were one-word grunts or dead silence. We both knew the wheels were coming off, but neither of us had the guts to say it out loud. So we just kept existing like that for months, like zombies in our own home. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Mom one evening. Her voice was soft, but there was this heavy edge I wasn't used to. She asked me to swing by the next day. I knew something was up. I drove over, thinking maybe she needed help with a busted pipe or some errands. But when I sat down, the look on her face screamed this wasn't about household chores. She dropped the bomb: ovarian cancer. Not a new diagnosis, she'd been carrying it for almost a year. It was late stage, and the treatments weren't doing what she'd hoped. Her doctors were blunt. Stop counting in years, start counting in months. That moment hit me like a freight train. I sat there, frozen, trying to wrap my head around it, but everything blurred. Mom was my anchor. Ever since Dad passed 12 years ago, she'd been my constant, my rock. Hearing I was gonna lose her, it was like the earth was about to split open under me. I just stared at her hands, remembering all the times they'd held mine through life's storms. And now I was the one being told to brace myself to let go. Those weeks after Mom's diagnosis were the roughest I'd ever slogged through. I kept trying to keep the agency from tanking, but my heart was checked out. I was either camped out at the hospital holding Mom's hand, or stuck in a mental loop of that hospital room even when I was miles away. Watching someone you love slip away bit by bit? No words do that justice. Some days, I just sit there, gripping her hand in silence. Other times, we'd chat about nothing. 'Cause how do you even start saying goodbye? I filled Katrina in on what was happening, and at first, she played the sympathy card, tossing out all the right phrases. But as the days dragged on, I noticed she was barely showing up. She popped by the hospital a handful of times, max. When I asked why, she'd roll her eyes and whine about work being a total drag or how hospitals gave her the creeps. I didn't push her. Honestly, I'd already made peace with the fact that she and Mom were never tight. Just polite, no warm fuzzies. So, I stopped expecting her to step up. I was too emotionally drained to pick a fight. 2 months. That's how long Mom hung on in that hospital bed before her body called it quits. 2 months of watching the toughest woman I knew fade away. When she passed, even though I'd braced for it, I was nowhere near ready. Mom always said she didn't want a big fuss when her time came. No cross-country mourners, no long speeches. Just a quiet burial, no delays. So, I made it happen exactly like she wanted. The next day, I handled it all, funeral home papers, the service, everything. Standing by her grave, listening to the pastor's words, I kept thinking, how do you keep moving when the person who showed you how to survive isn't here anymore? That kicked off the darkest chapter of my life. One I thought I'd face with my wife in my corner. Boy, was I wrong. Katrina had her own game plan. A week after Mom's burial, I got a call that threw me for a loop. Her lawyer asked if I could swing by his office when I had a sec. I booked it for the next afternoon. Walking in there felt like wading through quicksand. I was still reeling from not being able to just call Mom and hear her voice. I figured the meeting was about tying up loose ends, maybe signing off on funeral costs or closing her accounts. Instead, the lawyer plopped down a fat file and dropped a bombshell. Before her health tanked, Mom had reorganized her finances, funneling everything into a trust. I sat there, quiet, as he broke it down in plain English. A trust is like a vault for money or assets, accessible only by certain people under strict rules. I was the sole beneficiary, nobody else got a key. Everything Mom had was locked in there for me, but I couldn't just grab the cash and run. She'd set it up with conditions that screamed she'd thought this through to protect me, even from beyond. The big one, I couldn't touch the full amount until after a 3-year stability period. My life had to stay steady, no major personal train wrecks, especially no divorce. And if I was in the middle of a divorce during those 3 years, my spouse was cut off completely. No dime, no loopholes, no court battles, nada. The money was untouchable, shielded from marital property laws. I sat there, clutching that folder, my brain spinning. Why'd Mom go to such extremes? Did she not trust Katrina? Not trust me? Was she just being paranoid? Or did she spot something in Katrina I'd been too blind to see? Mom was always private, careful, never flaunting her worth or bragging. She lived quietly and apparently planned that way too. I didn't question her choices. Deep down, I knew she just wanted me safe no matter what. I left that office in a daze and told Katrina I'd met with the lawyer about Mom's inheritance. I didn't mention the trust, the waiting period, or the clauses. Didn't think it mattered, and it wasn't the time. When I brought it up, she barely glanced up from her phone, just muttering, "Your mom was always so together, huh?" I thought maybe she was playing it cool to not seem money-hungry. Now I know better. She was already scheming, wheels turning. 2 weeks later, I got blindsided on a random workday. I was at the office, slogging through reports, when some guy walked in, asked for me by name, and handed me a sealed envelope. "You've been served," he said. I opened it and my stomach dropped. It was a divorce petition. Katrina was pulling the plug, citing irreconcilable differences. I was floored. Yeah, we weren't exactly lovebirds lately, and our communication was in the gutter, but we hadn't even fought recently. No warning, no "we need to talk." Just that cold, official letter. I stormed home and confronted her. "What's this? You're divorcing me without even a heads up." She didn't even blink, just smirked and said, "We've grown apart, Dylan. Let's not make a soap opera out of it." Then she sashayed off like she'd already checked out. I stood there, feeling like I was talking to a complete stranger. The divorce dragged on for months, slow and soul-sucking, like a storm that wouldn't quit. During mediation, Katrina came in hot, her lawyer smugly demanding half of all our current and future assets. That future part was key. She thought Mom's inheritance was in the bag. I hadn't spilled the details about the trust because, frankly, I didn't think I had to. I hadn't even touched the money. It was still locked away, just as Mom planned. What Katrina and her lawyer didn't bother to check was the trust's ironclad rules. If I was mid-divorce during that 3-year window, she got zilch. At one mediation session, my lawyer laid it all out, dropping the trust documents like a mic. He explained how the inheritance wasn't marital property, never hit our joint accounts, and was protected by Mom's clauses. The look on Katrina's face? Priceless, like someone yanked the jackpot right out of her hands. Her lawyer flipped through the papers, back and forth, before slumping back and muttering, We might need to rethink our strategy. They thought they had a slam dunk, but they were shooting airballs. Katrina's big move? Total backfire. The divorce went through, but without a cent of Mom's money, Katrina only got a slice of our shared assets, which, let's be real, wasn't much by then. Her settlement got eaten up by legal fees, nowhere near the payday she'd banked on. And oh, she was pissed. After the settlement, she went off, calling me selfish, a snake, accusing me of scheming with Mom to screw her over. I didn't hold back. I told her straight up, when I first heard about the trust's clauses, I thought Mom was being extra. But after the stunt you pulled, I see why she did it. She clocked you from day one, and she made sure I was covered. That was our last real talk. The divorce wrapped up about a year after it started. She went her way, I went mine. Months later, out of the blue, Katrina slid into my DMs with a late-night sob story. She was drowning in debt, everything crashing down, and she didn't know who else to turn to, said she was stuck. For a split second, that old instinct to swoop in and save her tugged at me. But I shut it down. I took a deep breath and typed back, Katrina, I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't be your lifeline. I wish you the best. And that was it. When someone shows you their true colors, especially when you're at rock bottom, you don't hand them a paintbrush to try again. That was the last we ever spoke. Looking back, I'm thankful for the red flags, the heartbreak that woke me up, and even the quiet that followed. Don't get me wrong. It hurt like hell. Losing my mom and my marriage in the same season? That kind of pain rewires you. But it also opens your eyes. Thanks for hearing me out.